Max Carter leaned back in his weathered rocking chair on the porch of his farmhouse, reveling in the tranquility of another sun-kissed morning in Harmony Valley. The golden rays illuminated the wildflowers swaying gently in the breeze, a vivid reminder of the life he had built on this 10-acre sanctuary. A steamy cup of coffee warmed his hands as he let the peaceful sounds of nature wash over him, the soft clucking of chickens in the yard and the distant rustle of leaves in the oak trees. Just as he took his first sip, the familiar serenity was shattered by the crunch of gravel beneath tires. Max squinted as a dark silhouette appeared at the end of his driveway. An imposing black SUV, tinted windows gleaming in the sun, rolled to a stop and a knot tightened in his stomach. "Great, just what I need," he muttered, setting his coffee down and rising from the chair. As he watched, four sharply dressed figures emerged from a vehicle, their serious expressions mirroring the crispness of their suits. At the forefront was a woman with raven hair pulled back into a meticulous bun, a stark contrast to the wild beauty of his surroundings. Determined and commanding, she stepped forward. "Mr. Carter," she called, her tone authoritative and devoid of warmth. "Depends. Are you selling something?" He shot back, crossing his arms in defiance. "I'm Karen Watson, president of the Harmony Valley Homeowners Association. We need to talk about your property," she replied, unwavering. Max's heart raced, a confusion morphed into irritation. "My property? What's that got to do with you?" "Actually, it has quite a bit to do with us. As of last month, your land has been incorporated into our HOA jurisdiction," she stated coolly, raising her clipboard slightly as if to emphasize her point. "Excuse me," Max said, disbelief coloring his voice. "You're telling me my farm, which I've nurtured and cared for long before any HOA existed, is now yours to command?" "Correct. And you have outstanding fines against your property totaling $3,899.95, she declared, her gaze steady, betraying no hint of empathy. The figure struck him like a lead weight, and a sense of indignation surged within him. "You think you can come here and demand money like that? This is a farm, not a cookie-cutter neighborhood. I'm not paying a dime," he spat, fists clenching at his sides. Karen's expression hardened, and she exchanged glances with her companions, three stoic figures waiting silently. "If you do not settle your dues, we will pursue corrective action. Expect further correspondence," she shot back, pivoting on her heels. As she strode back toward the SUV, Max felt fire coursing through his veins. "You think this is over?" he called after her. "You picked the wrong farm to mess with." The SUV pulled away, leaving him alone, heart racing, fury boiling beneath the surface. He turned slowly, surveying the beauty of his property, the field stretching toward the horizon, the barn standing proudly, and the veils of colorful blooms dancing in the wind. This was his sanctuary, his life's work. As twilight descended, Max sat at his dining table, pen poised over a blank page. He knew he couldn't let this injustice stand. His resolve crystallized with each passing minute. The encroachment had sparked a rebellious fire in him. He would not only defend his home, but ignite the spirits of his neighbors to stand alongside him. A plan began to form. Max decided he would host a town meeting at the old community center where residents often gathered for potlucks and celebrations. He wanted everyone to understand the gravity of the situation. The HOA couldn't just impose fines and restrictions without recourse. In the following days, he canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors, sharing his story, and rallying support with an infectious enthusiasm. "Can you believe it? They think they can bully us into submission," he exclaimed to Mrs. Thompson, the sweet elderly woman who had lived next door for over 3 decades. Her eyes widened, and her bushy white eyebrows shot up in surprise. "I had no idea. You must organize a meeting. Max, get everyone involved," she urged, her voice trembling with urgency. Encouraged by the responses of other neighbors, Max tossed flyers into mailboxes, and soon murmurs of discontent rippled through Harmony Valley. The community that had been quiet in content suddenly found resolve, and before long, they rallied around Max, energizing each other as the meeting day approached. When the night arrived, the old community center brimmed with curious faces, young and old, neighbors who had known one another for years, and some who had never spoken. Max stood before them, adrenaline pumping, heart racing with the anticipation of collective strength. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady and loud enough to echo off the walls. "Today, We stand at a crossroads. The Harmony Valley HOA is trying to impose fines and control our lives. They see us not as a community but as a revenue stream. Murmurs of agreement erupted from the crowd, and Max felt a rush of energy from their support. We cannot allow them to dictate our way of life. This is our home, and we get to decide how we live it. He detailed the fines and announced his research into the HOA's regulations, pointing out the inconsistencies and shortcomings in their legal framework. Passion surged through him, fueled by shared frustrations. Neighbors nodded, their expressions shifting from indifference to outrage, their collective anger morphing into determination. As he described his vision, a community united against oppressive control, the atmosphere charged with hope. The room filled with shouts of encouragement as residents shared their own stories of grievances and concerns about the HOA's reach. Farmer Jane spoke of her struggles, while retired Mr. Collins recounted tales of decades lost to regulations that felt petty and overbearing. Max lifted his arms, inviting them to join forces. Together, we can take a stand. We can formulate a response, rally against these fines, and reclaim our sense of community. If we fight back, we can show them that we are more than just names on an HOA letter. The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of enthusiasm washing over him. He realized in that moment just how powerful unity could be. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about reclaiming their lives, their land, and their right to live freely in the way they chose. As the meeting concluded, Max stepped outside under a blanket of stars, the cool night air refreshing against his skin. He could almost hear the pulse of the valley, a rhythm that resonated with possibility. His fight was only beginning, and with the support of his neighbors behind him, he felt unstoppable. Together, they would confront Karen Watson and the HOA, turning what had begun as an encroachment into a full-fledged movement. The winds of change were stirring in Harmony Valley, and he was ready to embrace it all. As the meeting concluded, Max stepped outside under a blanket of stars, the cool night air refreshing against his skin. He could almost hear the pulse of the valley, a rhythm that resonated with possibility. His fight was only beginning, and with the support of his neighbors behind him, he felt unstoppable. Together, they would confront Karen Watson and the HOA, turning what had begun as an encroachment into a full-fledged movement. The winds of change were stirring in Harmony Valley, and he was ready to embrace it all. The following days were a whirl of excitement and purpose. Max couldn't remember the last time he felt so invigorated, surrounded by his neighbors who now approached him with a newfound sense of camaraderie. They shared ideas and strategies at impromptu gatherings, reminisced about the valley's history, and recounted tales of their own struggles against the suffocating grip of regulations. With each conversation, the resolve grew stronger. Residents began painting signs that proclaimed their pride in Harmony Valley and their right to govern their own lives. Save Our Valley and Farmers for Freedom adorned the front lawns, each message a resounding reminder of their collective purpose. Max harnessed the enthusiasm of the community to organize a rally at the center of town. It would be a demonstration of unity, a show of strength that would not go unnoticed. He reserved a local park, envisioning families gathering together, children playing, and neighbors sharing stories of their connection to the land. Flyers were distributed, emails were sent, and the buzz of anticipation was palpable. As the day of the rally approached, Max worked late into the night. He prepared speeches, gathered information about the HOA's regulations, and even secured a local farm band to entertain the crowd. The excitement blurred the line between work and joy. Each task fueled his determination, and he could hardly sleep at night, dreaming of what was to come. The day of the rally dawned bright and clear, the sun casting a warm golden hue over Harmony Valley. Max arrived early to set up, his heart pounding with every step. The park transformed as families began to gather, bringing homemade dishes to share, children running in jubilant circles, the air filled with laughter and warmth. By noon, the park was alive with people, some sitting on blankets while others mingled. Max stood on a small wooden stage, looking out at the crowd. He felt a surge of pride swelling in his chest. This wasn't just a rally, it was a declaration of independence for the community he loved. He approached the microphone, his palms slightly damp with sweat but his heart unwavering. "Thank you all for being here today," he called out, his voice ringing with sincerity. The cheers from the crowd filled him with confidence. We've gathered not just to oppose unfair fines and regulations, but to celebrate who we are as a community." As he spoke, the momentum building in the crowd surged with enthusiasm. He detailed their shared struggles under the HOA's framework, how fines had affected their way of life and the injustices they faced for daring to live authentically in their beloved valley. He challenged the residents of Harmony Valley to imagine what they could reclaim if they stood together, their traditions, their farms, their very freedom. The crowd began to chant, their voices rising in unison. "Harmony Valley! Harmony Valley!" The energy was electric, and Max felt the power of their collective spirit. Just as he reached the climax of his speech, a familiar figure emerged from the tree line at the edge of the park, the distinct silhouette of Karen Watson. Her sharp suit stood in stark contrast to the casual joy of the gathered crowd, and Max's heart lurched. He hadn't expected her to confront them here, especially on such a hopeful day. Karen approached, a look of disdain etched on her face. The laughter and enthusiasm dwindled as the crowd turned their attention toward her. "I hope you all realize how foolish this is," she said, her voice crisp and unwavering. "Do you think this will change anything?" Max stepped forward, determination solidifying as he faced her. "We believe it's time to reclaim our community and stand against oppression." "I'm not here to argue philosophical ideals," she shot back, narrowing her eyes. "You're all playing a dangerous game. The HOA has rules in place for a reason. Unchecked, this valley will lose its value, and so will your homes. This isn't just about you, Maximum. No, it's about all of us," he countered, gesturing to the crowd behind him, who were now murmuring in solidarity. "These are our homes, our traditions, and we refuse to be dictated by anyone who doesn't understand our way of life." Karen smirked, but there was a flicker of concern in her eyes. "You'll find that playing by your own rules has consequences. I suggest you think very carefully about your next steps." Then, with that, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the pavement, leaving an unsettling silence in her wake. Max's heart raced, the tension in the air thickening as the crowd mulled over the encounter. But he quickly resolved to keep their spirits high. "Don't let her dampen our resolve," he rallied, his voice rising again. "We stand united for our right to live freely, and together we will fight back whatever comes our way." The energy returned like wildfire, and together they erupted into applause. The crowd cheered, laughter mingling with the sounds of the band setting up. As the music played and the sun started to set behind the trees, Max felt a renewed hope blossoming in his chest. This was only the beginning. The impact of their rally would resonate throughout the valley and beyond. He just knew it. The fight against the HOA wasn't just his, now it was theirs. And with this newly forged unity, they would become an unbreakable force determined to reclaim their home. Harmony Valley was more than just a name. It was a promise of resilience, and he would see that promise fulfilled. The energy returned like wildfire, and together they erupted into applause. The crowd cheered, laughter mingling with the sounds of the band setting up. As the music played and the sun started to set behind the trees, Max felt a renewed hope blossoming in his chest. This was only the beginning. The impact of their rally would resonate throughout the valley and beyond. He just knew it. The fight against the HOA wasn't just his, now it was theirs. And with this newly forged unity, they would become an unbreakable force determined to reclaim their home. Harmony Valley was more than just a name. It was a promise of resilience, and he would see that promise fulfilled. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in Harmony Valley shifted. Neighbors exchanged more than pleasantries. They exchanged strategies, ideas, and plans for future actions. Max found himself at the center of this newfound unity, guiding discussions that flowed late into the evenings on porches and around dining tables. Residents began reaching out to other communities facing similar oppressions from their own HOAs. A network formed, connecting them to council, resources, and examples of successful challenges against HOA policies. With each new connection, Max felt the movement gaining momentum. Among the supporters, a fiery young woman named Lily stood out. Her passion for environmental issues was contagious, and she quickly became one of Max's closest allies. Together, they began crafting a comprehensive plan to address not only their grievances but also to promote a sustainable future for Harmony Valley. Eco-friendly farming practices, community gardens, and local market became central to their vision. Let's show the world what we stand for, not just what we stand against, Lily urged during a planning session one sunny Saturday afternoon. This is about more than just the HOA. It's about preserving our land and nurturing it for future generations. Max nodded, her unwavering drive fueling his enthusiasm. Exactly. If we can create something beautiful together, they won't just see us as troublemakers, they'll see us as leaders. Leveraging social media, they began sharing their journey, posting updates about the movement, the rally, and their evolving vision for the valley. The response was overwhelming. Neighbors who had long felt isolated found camaraderie in the online community, and even those outside their borders expressed support. Stories of similar struggles poured in from around the country, with messages of solidarity and tips from seasoned activists. One evening, while reviewing comments and support messages, Max stumbled upon a post from an environmental organization offering to host a workshop in Harmony Valley about sustainable practices and community resilience. Excited by the idea, Max quickly reached out and arranged a date. The following week, the park buzzed with activity again as volunteers arrived to help set up for the workshop. Tables were laden with materials, pamphlets, and a banner proclaiming, "Building a Sustainable Future Together." The community came out in droves, eager to learn and participate. When the workshop began, Max welcomed everyone, his enthusiasm echoing in the warm afternoon air. As the facilitator introduced concepts about permaculture, sustainable agriculture, and community cooperation, inspiration lit up the faces of the attendees. Max could feel their hope and determination growing with each passing hour. After the technical presentations, a local farmer shared her story of overcoming challenges in her own fight against restrictive regulations. Her tales of resilience resonated deeply with the community, each personal anecdote striking a chord among the listeners. When she encouraged everyone to share their aspirations for the valley, a spontaneous discussion erupted. Ideas flowed, questions were raised, and plans were hatched. That evening, under a tapestry of stars, Max gathered with Lily and a few other key members of their group to reflect on the day. Exhausted but exhilarated, they exchanged thoughts about the impact of the workshop. "We've turned a corner," Lily said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "If we keep this momentum, we can organize a farmers market. We can showcase the beauty of our land and our community while making a statement against the HOA's oppression." "Absolutely," Max responded, feeling a warmth spread through him. "Let's mobilize everyone. We can frame it as a community celebration, an opportunity to build support and educate people about sustainable practices while showing off what Harmony Valley really stands for." Plans quickly took shape, and they set to work organizing the farmers market, reaching out to local artisans and farmers willing to participate. Word spread like wildfire, and soon residents were volunteering to help with everything from setting up booths to organizing entertainment. As they worked tirelessly, another meeting loomed on the horizon, a hearing with the HOA, where Max and his fellow residents would formally contest the fines and restrictions. Tension swirled in his stomach as the date approached, but he was resolute. There was strength in their burgeoning movement, and he saw it as an opportunity to harness that strength to fight for what was right. On the eve of the hearing, with a mixture of fear and determination coursing through him, Max gathered his closest supporters at his farmhouse. They shared ideas for their presentations, practiced their speeches, and reinforced their resolve as a tight-knit group. "We are not individuals standing alone," Max reminded them, his voice firm. "Tomorrow, we stand together. No matter what happens, we are a community. We will fight for our values, our homes, and our way of life." The following morning, as they made their way to the HOA's building, the tension was palpable. Max could feel the weight of anticipation. This was their moment to show solidarity. They walked side by side, heads held high, united against the formidable force that threatened to shatter their peace. Arriving at the HOA office, they were met with the imposing figure of Karen Watson, flanked by a handful of officials who eyed the gathered residents coolly. As they took their places in the hearing room, Max felt his heart pound in his chest. It was time to turn their words into action, to transform their dreams into reality. The members of the HOA sat behind a polished table, and one of the officials cleared their throat, sending a ripple of silence through the room. As they prepared to commence, Max glanced around at his neighbors, old friends, newer allies, all standing shoulder to shoulder, ready to defend their home. A sense of calm washed over him. The fight for Harmony Valley had begun, and they were ready to seize their future together. As the members of the HOA settled into their chairs, the atmosphere in the room pulsed with tension. Max looked at the faces of his neighbors, each one a reflection of hope, fear, and determination. They were ready to fight for their future, to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. The official seated at the head of the table tapped the gavel, commanding silence. Today's hearing is to address the recent complaints regarding property violations within Harmony Valley, as well as the concerns brought forth by the community. We will hear both sides before making any decisions. Karen Watson leaned forward, her demeanor as frosty as ever. Thank you for allowing us this hearing. It's crucial to remember that the regulations ensure the integrity of our community. Without them, chaos will ensue. Her gaze swept the room, punctuating her word with a hint of threat. We have seen firsthand the consequences of neglecting these standards. Max's heart raced. He could feel the spirit of the valley behind him, drawing strength from the collective will of his neighbors. They weren't going to be intimidated this time. Stepping forward, he cleared his throat, steadying himself. We acknowledge that rules serve a purpose. However, those same rules must also respect the rights and traditions that exist within this community. We're not simply pushing back against regulations. We're advocating for our way of life. Applause erupted from the residents gathered in the room, echoing off the walls. Max's confidence surged, and he continued, Today, we stand united, not as outlaws, but as a community ready to embrace sustainable practices and revitalization, not destruction. With each word, he could see the interest of some of the HOA members begin to shift. But Karen wasn't done yet. With all due respect, Mr. Bennett, one cannot ignore the potential consequences of this movement. Her voice and eyes narrowed. You risk not only your own homes, but also the entire integrity of our investment in this valley. Max wasn't going to back down. In truth, we're already at risk. We have been stifled by unwarranted fines and regulations that fail to reflect our community's values. We're speaking up not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. One older member of the HOA, who looked increasingly uneasy, leaned forward. Can we truly find a middle ground? Perhaps a review of the regulations alongside your proposed initiatives. A spark of hope flickered within Maximum. That's exactly what we're asking for, a seat at the table where we can collaborate and create a vision for Harmony Valley that respects both tradition and innovation. The room seemed to breathe more freely as they continued to engage, both sides exchanging passionate perspectives. Just when Max began to imagine a possible resolution, Karen interjected, her voice cold and calculated. While I respect the passionate sentiment in this room, we must remember that the HOA functions under a framework that cannot be easily altered. If decisions are made that contradict our bylaws, there will be consequences. Tension thickened as gasps filled the room. The implications of her words hung heavily. Suddenly, one resident, an older gentleman named Mr. Porter, raised his hand, trembling slightly. I've lived in Harmony Valley for 30 years. I've seen this community through its ups and downs. We are not just property lines on a map or a ledger of fines. We are a tapestry of lives intertwined, memories made among the fields and hills. We deserve respect, recognition, and, most importantly, a chance to thrive together. As his words resonated, Max felt an infusion of courage ignite within the community. Voices rose in support, and a groundswell of agreement roared through the room. They stood for something greater, not just for themselves, but for the rich history of Harmony Valley. Before the official could regain control, Karen shot up from her seat, fury now etched on her face. This is amateur theatrics, she spat. If you think you can circumvent our regulations without consequences, you are sorely mistaken. Max met her glare head-on. We're not here to circumvent anything. We seek dialogue. But there's a limit to what we'll accept. If you choose to stifle our voices, we'll take this to every outlet available, the media, neighboring communities, social platforms. We won't back down. An atmosphere of uncertainty crackled. The official hesitated, then interjected. I think we need to take a recess to consider the matter further. We welcome dialogue, but we must proceed with caution when it comes to any alterations to the bylaws. As everyone began to rise, Max quickly turned to his community, a mix of determination and apprehension washing over him. He could sense they were on the brink of a breakthrough, something that could redefine their future, if they played their cards right. Once outside in the hallway, whispers filled the air. Residents conferred in clusters, comparing ideas and considerations. Max felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. Their voices were alive with anticipation. But as they shared their hopes, Karen's voice sliced through the chatter. "I suggest you all enjoy your brief victory," she called out, her tone menacing. "Know this. The HOA has more resources at its disposal than you could possibly anticipate. You think this is just about fines? You're playing with fire, and soon this community will experience repercussions you'll wish you could take back." Everyone fell silent, her ominous warning casting a shadow over their exhilaration. Max's instincts told him they were nearing something significant, something that could either flourish or smolder in their hands. The recess ended, and everyone returned to the conference room, ready for what came next. He stood face to face with the HOA, everything hung in the balance. A vote would soon be cast. As the officials prepared to deliver their verdict, the silence thickened. Max held his breath, his heart pounding in anticipation. "All in favor." The official's voice rang out, but before he could finish, the room was plunged into chaos. The door to the conference room burst open, and in stormed a group of news reporters, cameras flashing as they entered to cover the story. "We've heard about the protests and the rally. What's your response to Harmony Valley standing against the HOA?" Gasps rippled through the room, and Karen's face went pale. Max barely caught his breath as he realized this was a moment he had hoped for, but also dreaded. The spotlight had exploded wide open, and every eye turned towards a mounting clash. "Are you ready to answer the community's call for change?" a reporter shouted. The pressure rapidly escalated. Tension cracked like electricity through the air. The HOA officials exchanged worried looks, and Max seized the opportunity, feeling the weight of every resident behind him. "This isn't an issue of us against you. This is an issue of community versus autocracy. We demand our voices are heard." Suddenly, Karen's voice cut through, seeping like venom. "This is a disgrace. You've taken this too far, and you will regret it." Each word dripped with bold promises of retaliation, and for the first time, a flicker of concern crossed the faces of the HOA. The stakes had skyrocketed. The room was at a boiling point, leaving everyone breathless. Would they be able to effectively counter the HOA's power, fueled by fear and threatened retaliatory actions? Or had the community's unity and growing support just lit the spark needed for change? As the counselors exchanged hasty whispers and the reporters clicked away, Max's resolve deepened. This isn't just a fight for our homes. It's a fight for our right to choose our own future. As a decision loomed above them, Max wondered if this would be the day they either began their ascent into freedom or tumbled into a battle they hadn't anticipated. The echo of Karen's threats loomed, as did the rays of hope filling the room. The future of Harmony Valley hung in the balance, and as the HOA officials raised their heads to speak, it was clear whatever decision was made today would forever alter the fate of the valley. They were on the edge of history. Would they soar or would they fall? The fate of their future was about to be revealed, and no one knew just how close they were to experiencing a turning point that could change everything, or nothing at all.